So let's go ahead and load in our typography, our copy for our article. So there's a quick way we can do this. We're going to use the type tool, and we're just going to click and drag to make a nice column of type. So this is our type. We can type it in. We can just paste it in from a Word document, however the client sends it to us. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in some placeholder text. And so I'm right here in my properties panel. And if I go all the way down here to quick actions, this is in 2020. This is in the 2020 Adobe InDesign. There is a quick little fill with placeholder text button. I'm going to click on this and it's going to automatically fill with some basic random text so we can just get an idea of how much text we have. We can play around with it so when we put in our final text, we'll have an idea of where we want to place it. So just kind of a quick way to get some copy to work with. Because a lot of people go, well, what do you use for articles? I'm like, well, you can't steal other people's articles. You either write it yourself or you can just put in this placeholder text just to give you an idea of how you want your text to look. If you have an older version of InDesign, you can do the same thing. You may not have this nice properties panel where everything is in one nice place. You may have all these subdivided panels. If that's the case, you can always go up to Type and go all the way down to fill with placeholder text. So that is another way you can do the same thing we just did with that shortcut button. So now this, and I'm going to go ahead and toggle off W for now. We can always toggle off W or toggle W to get all that grids and stuff off so we can have a nice, crisp, clear view of our typography. So this is how kind of paragraph management works in InDesign. And it's kind of a unique property of InDesign and where it really shines. So let's say I have what's called overflow text. So let's say I copied a big article into this smaller box, but the article is a page long. What's going to happen is it's called overflow text. So when I collapse this, let's say I collapse it by half, that text disappears or it gets cropped in some ways. You get this little button, this little addition button. This is going to be your overflow text button. You can click on this and it's going to create a new box, and we can split up text this way. So if we have an article and we have one column, we want to bring it to a new column. This is exactly how you do it with overflow text. I'm going to click in an open area, and now I have another opportunity to bring all the text that was disappeared or really comes after, that paragraph. So let's go like this. It's going to automatically bring it down here. So you can have multiple different columns this way. This is exactly how columns are created. What's great about overflow text is it's dynamic, so I can change it and then both columns will automatically read in order. They'll go in order, and you can collapse it, and as I collapse it, more text will come into the next one. And what's great about this is you can repeat this over and over as many times as you want. So let's cut that off. And that paragraph that was cut off, let's say I want to have another column of information. I just pressed that little red addition sign, and we can create a third column. So that's kind of the basics of how overflow text works. So let's go ahead and create some more placeholder text here. So we're not going to worry too much about the grid. We're just going to go ahead and get our typography fine-tuned. So let's bring this down and get a plan. Let's go ahead and zoom out. Sometimes it helps to zoom out. And let's create two columns. Let's have one column here and one column. We can make sure the columns are the same width, just like that. And one column of information here. We can also put like a little, not necessarily the main header, but we could put a little subheader right here. We might need to add more overflow text, which I'm just going to go down here and fill just to kind of show an example of a little bit of a longer article. And we can start to shift around our elements to adjust. So we can make that photo a little bit bigger, still have it bleed over to the other page. And we can create a new text box and put like a little subheading here. So this is not going to be your main headline, but it's going to be kind of, if we looked at type hierarchy, you kind of have your biggest headline, you have a subheadline, a subheading that's going to be a little bit smaller than your main headline. This is going to be your subheading. So subheading will go right here in this area, and we will fill that in with real text later. I'm just going to make this type a little bit bigger. I'm using my keyboard shortcut Command Shift and left and right brackets, or you can go over to your character panel and increase it that way. So now we can toggle W back on and see how we can maybe match this to the grid. And since it's on snap to grid, things have already snapped for us. It's going to make sure the columns are the same in width, which will be easy to do when you have the grid on to check that. Just making that the same width. We want our columns to be the same. So what would be an issue? Let's toggle W off. What would be an issue with some of this type? Well, first of all, when it comes to large blocks of type, we study that sometimes that ragged look on the right, this is called a ragged alignment. That's great for smaller paragraphs. So this subheading, having a ragged kind of alignment here. Ragged means it's not all straight or even. It works well. But when you have larger columns, sometimes it could start to look a little messy. So to fix that ragged alignment, I'm going to highlight all the type that I want to change. And in your properties panel, you'll notice a paragraph option. So this is how we're going to manage our alignment for our paragraphs. And we are going to do this one right here. It's justify with for last line aligned left. So we're going to go ahead and click on that. It's going to do a nice flushed alignment all the way down to the left and right sides. What you'll notice when we did that is we'll see lots of different hyphenations. And I have a lot of clients who tell me they don't like to see that many hyphenations. So there's a couple of tricks you can do to resolve that issue. Right here in your paragraph panel, you can unclick hyphenate, and it's going to remove all the hyphenations and redo the spacing so that there is no need for hyphenations. And sometimes this works and sometimes it doesn't. In this case, it doesn't. When you have really tight columns and you try to not have hyphenations, if you have really long words, it can look a little awkward with spacing. So you just have to be careful and kind of just judge, is there too much awkward spacing between the lines? You can toggle that on and off, hyphenate. So we turned it off and on. And there's a couple other things that can help too. So we have these natural paragraphs, and what really helps to break down paragraphs is put an extra space between the start and the beginning of a paragraph. So one thing we do, we can highlight all of our type. We can go right here in our paragraph options, and there's the space between paragraphs using the same style. So what this will do is this will put spacing between the paragraphs. So let's say we want to do 0.2 inches. Of course, you could be in centimeters if you have centimeters. So this just adds a little spacing between all of the paragraphs, which helps everything breathe a little bit. We don't have so much type that's run up together. It's overwhelming for a viewer to not have this nice natural spacing for the eye to break down information. There's also some other elements we can talk about right here in our paragraph panel. We have the first line indented, so you can do the first line indented as well. But usually you kind of pick one or the other, whether you have spacing or an indentation. So let's say we go back to 0 for spacing, and then you have kind of this indent. But both of them are a little bit overkill. So what we can do is we can reduce our indentation and then just keep the spacing. But if you ever wanted to indent that first line, that is the key right here, is the first line left indentation. You can also shift things to the left and right. So let's say we wanted to have a little pull quote right here, and we want to add indentation on the left and right of just the selected text. You'd go right over here to this area, and this is going to be your indentation, so we can add a little spacing here. And this is the right side, so we can add a little bit here to kind of create little pull quotes, and just like that. So we're starting to get some basic layouts here. What would be nice is using dividing lines. So dividing lines are really nice to break up larger blocks of copy. So I thought, what if we just put a little divider line right here in this area? A great way to add dividing lines is go right up here to your line segment or your line tool. I'm just going to click, and I'm dragging right here, so I'm going to be able to drag. And if I want to create a perfect straight line, we can just hold down the shift button and it'll automatically create a straight line for us, and then release. And we want to be able to make this a specific color. It doesn't matter the colors right now because we'll get to that a little bit. I'm just going to make that a stroke. And we're right here in our appearance panel, and we can make that thicker. And what's great about InDesign is they have some really nice built-in stroke character or stroke styles that you can apply. So for example, I really like this white diamond, and you can make it a little bit bigger so you can see the details. So you can see how it adds a little bit of detail to your stroke. And there's a lot of different pre-built one. There's the dots, so you could do the dots. Or you can go back and do this white diamond, which I think looks kind of interesting for this style of article. So now that we zoom out, we have some basics. Let's go ahead and start to load our photography in so we can get an idea of what we need to do there.